Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I'm so excited to paint with you today. We're going to do another page in our watercolor journals, but we are going to be doing one by request. So someone left a comment, Miriam, thank you for your comment, who requested to do a mermaid because she's trying to paint a card for her 4-year-old granddaughter, and she loves mermaids. Well, mermaids are very complicated. Anything that's a person, especially in full body, is going to be complex. So here are some suggestions or tips and tricks for doing something that's relatively complex, but making it a lot easier for yourself and still getting something that looks fun and like you put a lot of time and work into it. Okay, so we want to do a mermaid. Step one, I'm not going to do a full mermaid with like a face and features and all of that. We're going to do a silhouette. Number two, you can, if you're not a strong drawer, what I would recommend is going to find some free silhouette clip art online. And take that clip art, so it's just in silhouette, it's the black outline, and you can use it just like that, or you can modify it in some way to make it more unique to your particular drawing. So for this, I have this drawn out silhouette of a mermaid, but you can see I have a few details on here. So I am going to add some details. It's not going to be full, just silhouette. We are going to use watercolor. So just to go over supplies, materials real quick, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer something like this. Like this is, I drew this on a piece of copy paper, but I'm going to transfer it. So if you printed a silhouette on here, and then you can transfer that silhouette. So I'll show you. We are using my 6x9 watercolor sketchbook. This is pretty big. It's just barely going to fit on there. I might actually have to modify it a little bit. 6x9 sketchbook. I have my core watercolor palette. We're just going to use a few colors from here. I am definitely going to use Dr. Peach Martin's Bleed Proof White, or for the white parts that I'm going to show you, you could mask those out if you prefer to use masking fluid. And then a couple of brushes. So I'm going to use a size 10 and a size 3. All right, so let's get started. For whatever you have that's either printed or you hand drew it in like a sketchbook or on another piece of paper, what I'm going to have you do is turn it upside down and find yourself a nice, at least a number 2 pencil. So a number 2 pencil works great. That's the standard type of pencil that you can find around the house. This is a mechanical number 2 pencil. If you have a darker one, great. If you have like a set of drawing pencils. And then you're just going to color the whole back just like this. Just not the whole back, but I'm trying to, stay around the outline. No need to color over here in the corner. But I'm just going to cover this whole area with a good amount of graphite from your pencil. Go all the way down. Now this is just one way to transfer. If you have a light box, this is good to use in a journal, because using a light box can be hard when you have something that is bound in a book. You can't stack the 2 pages on top of each other easily. And you can color it this way and that. All right, so, and I'm using a mechanical pencil, and I'll show you something in just a moment. But after this step, after everything is colored, okay, we're going to flip it back over and we're going to place it how we want it on our page. Now mine's going to go off the page a little bit, so I'll modify it as I draw, because I can see the little tail fin gets off the page here. I have a mechanical pencil, so what I'm going to do, I don't need this actual pencil to trace this if you don't want to, but you can leave it on. You can just push that graphite in and just use the hard tip of the pencil, because all we need is pressure. The other thing you can do, if you do need to kind of keep track of what you're tracing, just go ahead and find yourself a ballpoint pen in a color would be great. I have some of these fine tip markers. I'll use a bright color so I can see it. I'll pick an orange. I am just going to place this down, tape it if you want to, if you're afraid of moving it, and you are going to just with a little pressure, going to trace around the edges. Of your silhouette. I'm not going to include all of the designs inside. Don't worry about that. Just the outside. I love this tail. I am going to have to, I'm going to modify it. So I'm going to go up to like right here. Although I loved it more. It's going to be a little lopsided. Just to keep it on the page. And then I have the hand. Hands are always really hard for me, especially even when drawing them in silhouette. I always feel like they look like lobster claws, but it just is what it is. And then I'm going to bring her chest down a little bit. All right, so now that the full outline is drawn, I'm going to take this off, and you can see it's going to be really light for you on camera there, but I can see it just fine. Let me put the cap back on that. I can see the outline of my mermaid on there. And now I'm going to take my pencil again. I'm going to use some graphite here, and I'm going to make any modifications or adjustments that I want to. So if I want to, you know, take this outline of the tail and make it a little... Again, I'm not going to put any of the details on. Those are going to go on in white later. But I want to refine my edges. Oh, this wrist is not quite right. Again, I always have trouble with hands in silhouette. They always look not quite right to me. Hair can get as crazy. I'm just gonna add some more hair. Actually, you know what? Let's add some hair up here flowing out. So again, don't be afraid to modify. So we just gave her more streaming hair, and then I'm actually going to bring this hair, we're going to give her a weight, we're going to trace that waist, we're going to bring this arm over here up a little further so we can see more of the arm, but that is going to go into the silhouette of her hair. Okay. No, this can't be rounded. There we go. Beautiful. So now we have this beautiful mermaid silhouette, and we're going to put some details on it that are going to make it pop even more. But now what I'm going to do, because I don't want these heavy pencil lines, I'm going to take a kneaded eraser and I'm just going to lighten everything up. The line is nice and defined. I can see it, but I just want to lighten it so that it's not distracting. And there's not a lot of extra graphite on the page that I don't need, that my hand will smudge through. And now we're going to have some fun with some paint and some wet on wet. All right, so let's get to painting and then we'll get to details. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick some colors. I'm going to keep a 3-color color palette. So we're going to go with Phthalo blue. I'm going to use a Dioxazine purple. You could actually stick with a 2-color color palette because you could just use Phthalo blue and magenta, Quinacridone magenta. And these 2 colors mixed would give you a purple, but I just used my Dioxazine purple that's in there. So now I'm going to go inside this outline and I'm going to wet all of these areas. It's really dry here by me now, so I might do this in sections. I'm gonna maybe just do the top with the hair first, and then I'll re-wet the bottom, because I feel like by the time, I don't know, things just are drying out really quickly. The air is really dry everywhere. So get that water in there. Hands. And if the hand area is too small, go ahead and use your smaller brush to wet that. All right, so we're just gonna start up here. Let me get this whole strand of hair wet. Add a little more water. Keep things wet. Okay, and now we're gonna start to take our colors and just drop them in. I'm gonna do face. I'm gonna go down here, and this is gonna be like a little bit of a tie-dye action going on here. You can also drop in extra water if you don't want to add more color, but you want to create some more movement in a few areas. Don't be afraid to drop color on top of color. Add some pink in there. So you can drop, let's put a water droplet or two in here. So that's just going to add more water and lighter areas. Let's keep going. I love this purple. I'm going to do the strands of the hair. Actually, let me get my smaller brush, because I kind of want the hair to be really defined at the edges, but then when it hits the water, it can do its little... So at the very end, I want it to be nice and dark, and so using the fine tip of the brush. Let's add a little magenta to some of this hair. So we'll do some magenta here along the blue. Oh, look at that bloom. Now I have core paints, and core paints are notorious in a good way for being very, having a lot of movement. The binder that they use when doing wet on wet, if you want a lot of movement, they're great. It might feel a little out of control to you at first. And you can kind of play with this stage for as much or as little as you want. And we can let it dry and also come back to it later. I'm going to make sure the whole face, yeah. Perfect. Okay, so while that's kind of drying, I'm just going to, my brush has nothing on it. I'm just moving things around a little bit. I think I want a little bit more color in here. Slightly different, purple and pink. And then here, seems a little flat. All right, I'm gonna try to step away and let it dry and continue with the tail. So let's re-wet the tail, or not re-wet it, just wet it. So the edge of my wet area had a nice bead of water on it. So it stayed wet, and I can just continue this down. all those little nooks and crannies in the tail. I'm definitely going to go along the edge of that tail. Okay. I think I'm going to go along the edge of the tail in blue. And I want it to be a pretty dark color along the edge. You know what, maybe I'll switch halfway through. Go purple. Like, look at that, how that core paint travels. It's insane. And we'll do pink as well. Do all three. And I do want the tail to be a little darker even, maybe more colorful than the top, because I am going to put some significant white details on there. So we'll kind of let them be a little separate. I'm going to go super dark. Now I'm just adding water to some spots. All right, so, oh, I smudged the hand up here a little bit. Let's see if I can fix that. All right, well, it'll be what it will be. So this has got a lot going on. It's got a lot of drying to do. It's going to be significantly lighter when it's done. It's got a lot of water play going on down there. So let's add a little bit more paint to a few spots. Get some darker blue. That's super dark. Okay, let's let all of this dry, and then we are going to come back, and I'm going to let this dry naturally. I'm not going to use my heat tool on it at all, because I want the wet on wet to be able to fully kind of do its thing. Okay, let it dry, and we'll come back and put on some details. All right, y'all, welcome back. And we have a dry mermaid now. And so now I'm going to add, you can add details, as few or as many as you would like with, you could use gouache. I'm going to use Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. You could use acrylic. You can use whatever you want. You could use white gel pens, and you can do white, or you could do darker colors as well. I'm going to do white. All right, so I have this bleed proof white. Mine is a little watery, but that's because I added water to it to stretch it a little further, but not much. All right, so I'm going to take this. Now I'm going to start on the fin, and the first thing I'm going to do is kind of outline. I'm going to give just a kind of organic little outline to the waist area. Might have been a little low, but. And then I'm not going to do all scales. I'm just going to give a suggestion in some spaces of where scales would be and overlapping. I'm going to skip a few spots. Continue our way down. You could do a full pattern if you wanted. I think we'll go down here, and they're getting smaller as they go down to the bottom. Put a couple more up here. There. So gave a suggestion of where all of the scales would be. Now you can also add, I'm going to add some details to the tail. So I'm using my size 3 brush. You could even use like a rigger brush for these fine details in the tail. So I'm going to go, let's see, trying not to make, and basically the lines where that would be in the fin. Now, normally in a silhouette, you wouldn't see these lines, but we're going to add them in here. Some are longer, some are shorter. I'm going to make some a little bit thicker. And normally these wouldn't be white. They would be like darker. They would be in shadow, but it's kind of like the reverse. So we have lines on her tail, and you could do the same thing with the hair if you wanted, or you could do a darker color in the hair, like adding just some texture within the hair itself. And you know, I'm going to bring some of this up here like this. And I'm actually going to go in with some darker color again. Let's see, I'm going to go in with some purple, I think. And put a few extra strands. So trying not to mess up my white, but just a few extra strands coming off like the mane. Just to give it that real look of movement. There we go. And then I think I'm done. You could add as many or as few details as you want. If you wanted to give her, like add like a top on her, like a seashell bathing suit or something like that, you could, but you don't have to do the whole face with all of the details. It's just not necessary to have a beautiful little, I'm actually going to do, hold on, to have a beautiful like representation of a mermaid. I am just going to add a few lines like right next to the hairline in a darker color like this, just to suggest like where the face starts and the hair starts. Perfect. And then this section under her arm, I just want to add, I'm just adding water right now. I'm going to add just a teeny bit more paint under here. So I'm going to do wet on wet. But I want that underside to be a little darker for some reason. It just felt right. And I'm just going to take hopefully my dog isn't going to start barking too much. I'm just going to take water on my brush and just blend this out. So making this area next to it wet. There we go. And our mermaid silhouette with bleed-proof white details is done. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope some of these tips were helpful for other paintings that you might want to do. Miriam, I hope this was helpful for your granddaughter's card, but try not to get too caught up in the details. You can make her a beautiful card with just minor details, but showing all of this beautiful color, and it will very much look like a mermaid. All right, y'all, take care. Happy painting, and we'll see you for the next watercolor journal page very soon.